Hello, and welcome to the second installment of my mixed breakdown series. This time we're going to take a look at a score by Ian Chen. This is for a film called This Land. Let's dive right in. So because Ian works in Cubase, he just sent me his project file and I mixed directly in that. He just basically printed everything down to audio, but this is the session that he composed in. Starting from the top, we have a marker track just showing each cue. Then we have the video followed by the dialogue and effects. And lastly up here we have Ian's ref mix, which is basically just how he had it when he first sent it to me. Continuing down we have the master music bus, which doesn't have anything on it, followed by the master VCA. So this is controlling all of the stems. You can see here that the automation is the same because it was written on this master VCA. So these are the stems that Ian decided to deliver. You can see the piano, cello, violin solo, which were recorded, string ensembles and pads, bass, and rhythm. Following that, we have a couple of group tracks for the instruments that were recorded live. Then below that, we have all of the effects channels. So for this project, I decided to have 2 reverbs for each stem. So as you can see, we have an altaverb, just mechanics, and that's followed by a longer 7th heaven hall. And I believe that's the same for all of the other stems. Below that, we have a couple of violin tracks which Ian and his wife Angela recorded themselves. Then we have a couple of different cello tracks recorded by Armin. Below that, we have all of the samples. As you can see, there are a lot of string tracks, and then a couple of piano, organ, choir, and things like that. Moving down to these folders here, we have Ian's original instrument tracks, which are all disabled. And then a couple of unused audio tracks. And this was just one of the mixes that I printed and brought back in. There is quite a bit of music here, so I'll just try to highlight a couple of different moments and we can get a sense of what the score is like. As you can hear, this score is mainly made up of strings, both the solo elements and the orchestral elements. If we start up at the top, we have these piano and bells. So you can see here I just have a limiter on the stem. That's just to prevent any clipping. As you can see, I have the output level to -1. That's just to help prevent these stems from clipping when they sum. If we take a look, that stem is for these 3 tracks here, for a couple of piano moments. As you can see, I've used the S1 to tighten up the stereo image a bit. We can take a listen to that. And then just the fab filter taking out some of the bottom. You can see not a lot of processing on these tracks. Pretty similar. Moving on to the next stem, we have a cello solo stem. As you can see here, I only have a Pro L2 on this. Down here we have another bus which these tracks are being sent through. So we have a fab filter, followed by the virtual mix rack, and that's followed by an Altiverb, adding this room here. Let's take a listen to what some of those plugins are doing. As you may have noticed on the virtual mix rack, I have here the lift, but it's not actually doing anything. And that's because I originally wanted a brighter sound on the solo strings, but Ian was worried that it would interfere with the dialogue. So we had to bring that back down and make it a bit darker on all of the solo strings. If we take a look at the individual cello tracks, you'll see a couple more plugins. Moving down the next couple of solo tracks, we don't have really any plugins going on these ones. There's another Pro MB. These are mostly just supporting the main cello line. And here at the end we have the solo cello broken into a couple of different tracks. Moving on to the next stem, we have the solo violins. You can see here on this stem I added the virtual tape machines just for some color, and followed by the same Pro L2. Once again we have this second bus here with a couple of plugins. In the same room. You can take a listen to some of those plugins. So this is the only track we have going to that stem. Just another Pro MB directly on that track. And this high shelf here was, again, to make these strings a bit darker. Moving on to the next stem, we have the string ensemble. So we have a couple of different elements going to this stem. And on the stem we have just another tape machine. So as you can see, we have Angela's violin playing going to that stem. You can take a listen to that. So looking at the rest of what's going to that stem, we also have this other cello group going to it, which is more of an ensemble type playing. So you can see that it has similar settings to the solo cello track. Moving on, we have a couple of different sample tracks going to that. As you can see, there aren't really any plugins going on these tracks here. I believe these are basically all Spitfire samples. Looking at this track down here, I believe it's the solo artist strings. And then the solo artist cello. Moving down to the next stem, we have the string pads. So quite a few Evo libraries here, and then a couple of LCO, and some different pad type tracks. As you can see, there aren't too many plugins aside from a couple of EQs and Pro MBs. If we take a look at the tracks on the bottom here, we have the organ. Moving on to the next stem, we have the bass. Again, just the Pro L2. Here I just want to roll off some of the bottom so it doesn't get too cluttered. There's quite a few elements going on here if we take a listen. And lastly, we have the rhythm stem. A couple of different shorter articulations going to these tracks. If I bring up the mixer, you can see that most of these tracks don't have a lot of processing on them. Just the occasional EQ or multiband compression and expansion. The biggest challenge in a project like this is to get everything to fit and sound like it belongs together. If we take a look at the automation, you'll see that some tracks have more automation than others. Ian wrote in a lot of his own automation on tracks like these pizzes, just for shaping the performance. I mainly focused on the string solos and just writing automation directly on the stems and groups. Let's just take a listen to one of the cues here. We can take a listen to another cue that focuses more on the solo elements. So I can quickly try to get it closer to the original mix I had, so you can get a sense of what that sounds like with more top end. When it comes to exporting the stems for this project, Ian just wanted everything in a single file for the entire film rather than separate cues. So I can just use the batch export here. And then I could just select all of my stems. Normally when I want to export the entire film, but with each cue in a separate file, I'll use the cycle markers here. So I can just create a different cycle marker for each cue, and then in one pass I can print out all of these stems for each cue and have it all named and ready to go. So this is a brief overview of the This Land score and how I approached mixing it. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a couple of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.